Okay, I think last week we just had a quick, no new topics, a quick recap meeting. A number of people had to go early and we were fast. So going back to the 28th. I guess before we get started on past history, is there new things that anyone wants to bring up?
Just some observation of some more CI failures over the weekend.
Do you have any analysis of them?
The logs seemed to show something network related, but it didn't. Not enough detail. It was a crash dump out of Python, and then rerunning it fixed it. So it was one of those ones that could be fixed by just rerunning the jobs that failed.
Interesting.
And there was a question about is anybody allowed to rerun things? And I think as long as you're somebody that can do the push, you can do the rerun, but I don't know what the policy is exactly.
Yeah, I was not able to rerun stuff, at least as of a couple weeks ago. So I just force pushed changes to force it to rerun.
Oh, okay. And your role as that you were not a maintainer at that time?
Right. Yeah, I couldn't rerun stuff. I haven't checked to see if I can now, but like I said, as a workaround, I would just force push my branch and that would kick it off again.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know, Sean, if we want to document somewhere that if there's a failure that doesn't appear to be related to the code change, you know, the first thing is to do a retry of the job, and I think there's two methods there that we've talked about. Where would you suggest we put that information for our developers and maintainers?
Seems like wherever we documented the contribution process.
Okay.
Makes no sense, yeah.
And then if you try a retry and it's the same failure, I guess then reach out to the CI team.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I'd prefer open a discussion. Then it's public. Everyone can see it. We don't have to deal with email.
Agreed.
Michael, will you go try and look on, like, I see you have a PR at the top of the list. Go look at the build and see, one, if you can rerun any jobs in DevOps, and two, if you can see the build artifacts.
Okay. Yeah, the problem I was hitting was the C spell getting stuck for like almost an hour. So that comes under another class of problem that I think it will eventually time out, but it can also just take a long time for you to realize something's going on.
Maybe we should, at a minimum, I think you can set a step and set how long each step should take, and we know that C spell should honestly not take longer than a minute.
Yep.
And that actually would be a bonus, because number one, if that's where we're crypto mining, or two, if that's, you know, going to time out in an hour anyways, like, let's break it early.
So it doesn't look like I can rerun anything at the moment. I can't manually run things either, like on the pipelines.
Okay. So I guess, Mike, that would be one of the benefits of moving to GitHub Actions, right? Is so we could align all the teams. And basically, if we put effort into GitHub teams, and getting the maintainers and everybody organized with the right permissions, then it would, I think that would flow into the actions as well. Otherwise, I think they're two parallel groupings.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the permissions differences are. I guess we'd have to kind of set something up and evaluate it to see if what the difference is. I agree. It's coordinating the two different services, GitHub as a source control system and Azure Pipelines as our build agents, and having to link them together. Most of our CI information is part of the source code itself, other than the configuration of that linkage between the two services. And so if we move to GitHub Actions, then I think it would be a single service, and the configuration of the CI jobs would be part of the configuration of the repository within GitHub.
Yeah. I'll go also look if we can add a GitHub group into Azure DevOps. There might be some sort of federated identity thing that we could maybe leverage.
I mean, you were asking about the ability to view the logs. The logs should be able to be viewed by anybody, right?
Michael, while you're there, can you go look? I'm pretty sure you can't see the build artifacts that are uploaded as part of the build. And oftentimes we've tried to limit the output on the main window because it gets overwhelming. And so I have relied on the build artifacts for sure. And so I think someone might be a little bit blind to that.
Yeah, I can definitely see the build logs in terms of the log output. I'm just going to check on the artifacts real quick. So I can see the artifacts are there. I just can't. Okay, I actually can download the artifacts. So I can both see and download the artifacts, like the build log artifacts.
Okay, good.
And I don't know if Azure Pipelines YAML has a way to code in a retry if a job fails into the YAML.
I mean, that always goes down a bad path where how many retries and how often, and yeah. It's probably Steward update. Is that right? Where we're pulling down external dependencies? Is that where you think you saw them over the weekend?
I don't recall, and I don't know if the log is still available. The PR that was associated with it, I don't know if that helps you on it, was one that was merged this morning. I believe it was 2756. Let me look at the checks there. It shows all passed now, but I don't know if I go to Azure, if it will show me the previous.
You can go to the pipeline itself and see the previous builds from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll dig through that as well and see. There's a couple red ones in the full list. 2542. 2542. Patch check even failed, but that might be a legit failure. Okay. So Mike, are you going to update the contribution to indicate how you can rerun?
Yes, I can work on the developer process that suggests that before sending an email to the mailing list about a CI issue.
Yeah. Okay. Any other opens for anyone?
So I have open about the EDK2 main branch. Do you have plan to create the main branch?
So when I looked at your branch you're staging, like the new master branch, I'm seeing a bunch of files with line endings that are unexpected. And I think you confirmed that they're unexpected. So I was hoping that you were going to push a new branch with all the line endings in the state that you wanted.
Yeah, since currently there's some pull requests are blocked by this. I think if you agree, I can firstly fix the line ending character issue on master, and then continue to sync the patch from EDK2 branch to repo to EDK2 base 2 repo.
Yeah, I mean, I have no concerns. I was just trying to call out that I thought the branch that you had prepared wasn't quite including all of the changes that you wanted. So either we need to prepare another branch and fix those, you know, or do a force push on this new master, since you should be able to force push that for now, and then we can put that into main
Yeah.
as the correct thing once all the linings are fixed. I guess the other thing we could try to do is put something into CI that doesn't let you commit a change with incorrect line endings.
Yeah. I think for now there's no such checkers. Yeah. We need to add the checker in CI to check the line ending characters.
Yeah, is the strategy there that you would check out on Linux and everything should have a Linux line feed? Because if you check out on Windows, Git will do its own conversion, right? So, or it can do its own conversion. So I guess we could try adding that to the Linux side.
Okay.
Okay. Any other open topics?
Just one more piece of data on that CI failure. I found the run that that passed this morning with the rerun, and the original one that failed. The odd thing about it is it shows all green now. I don't know why after a rerun this morning it would take the runs from last Friday and now mark them as pass.
Did you click the run failed jobs or something like that?
Just yeah, on the GitHub side where there's that rerun. Yeah. Rerun the.
I think I've seen where if you don't force like a new run, but you're just rerunning the failed jobs, it actually basically throws away the old state and replaces the old state with the new state.
Got it. Okay. So we lost that data then on the failure. Okay.
Okay.
But that's kind of useful because if you're tracking your CI results, like again on your branch, and something intermittent like this happens and it gives you a failure, you can basically tell it to just redo that exact build, but redo the failed jobs. And if it works, it makes your CI reflect the status properly where you see the green check marks and stuff. So it's kind of nice to just like get things to reflect properly in some cases.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, the only I had additional open of I think Mike, you and I have been talking a long time about code coverage. We have been prototyping a GCC solution, and I hope to bring it to EDK2 soon. so that a developer of a host-based unit test, which we don't have near enough of those, could look and see what branches of their code execution need to be enhanced, or their tests, so that they get better code coverage.
No, I think that's great. So what's the latest status of that feature?
So it works well with GCC 5 toolchain, right? And then we have the scripts and tools to easily convert the data into HTML, which will let you look at the actual source code annotated with the lines covered and the lines missed. So, and you can run it locally too. So it works both. The server will, if you've ever explored through like a build, you can see code coverage as well as your test results. It'll go into that location if you're running server-based CI, and we'll probably upload the HTML file as well so that we have an artifact. And then for local development builds, if you're building on Linux with GCC, you'll be able to locally see that as well.
Yeah,
Assuming you're
that's the part that will accelerate the developers' quality of their tests. I know that previously you had raised concerns about how to actually provide good information about the code coverage that was meaningful, given that we don't have much coverage on the packages yet. So is your first step just to give that feedback directly to the developer that's working on unit tests for a single component?
Yeah, I would say that the metrics gathered around like percent covered in those are not really valid, because they only take into effect the source code that's used for the test. I think trying to collect them broadly across the entire code base will require some custom work, and that will be a future initiative.
Yeah, I think we need to get to a pretty good percentage of tests implemented before that data would start being meaningful.
Yeah, yeah. 1% doesn't really do much for us, does it?
Yeah.
Sean, do we have a plan to enable some Windows-based code coverage solution based on Visual Studio Cloud? Yeah.
The issue we've seen, and I guess this is a great place to talk about it if the other people have better success, but the issue we've seen is that if you do not build with Visual Studio, meaning the actual Visual Studio IDE, then the code coverage stuff doesn't work well. If someone has a recipe where they can build, through a command line and through the build tools, that would be great, but I haven't seen one.
Okay.
There was.
How's the GCC solution working?
So it works pretty easily. I mean, it's basically a couple flags and a couple post-processing steps that all run automatically and create the HTML file. So it's pretty nice.
And I think if you're a Linux developer with your own editors, I think there's likely some ways to take the gcov, lcov information and see it visually inside your own editor, right?
Yeah.
I would expect so, yeah.
Well, maybe the same way can be applied on the Clown PDB, toolchain.
Yeah, I think so because GCC's already in the like it's already part of CI. That's where we targeted first. But I agree. I think Clang PDB would actually be very easy to enable as well.
Yeah, the Clown PDB, is a cross OS. It can, for work in Windows. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So anyways, I hope we'll have some updates to the unit test package to describe how that's done, and kind of help enable those that are actually writing unit tests to see where they need to improve their tests. That kind of ties into, Oliver from Red Hat's been doing some work on containerized build using GCC. I don't know if anyone from this group here is interested, but we've also been trying to do that so that a developer on any operating system that can run a container can quickly run GCC inside a container and both test as well as do these things that are GCC specific.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful to have. I know we and others have done our own versions of that, but having something that's centrally maintained and would be helpful.
Okay. Do you have requirements around what versions of Linux they are? All those kind of like things that you can imagine.
Well, as long as it's containerized, it really doesn't matter. As long as we can, run it under something, that's available everywhere, like Docker, or everywhere on Linux, I should say. We build on Linux. So.
Okay.
Do we have a good container solution in Windows?
So we've been my team's been prototyping running under WSL, and the only negative effect that we've seen is that you need to reclone your sources for the most efficient build. You need to reclone your sources into either your WSL or the container, because the file system across from Windows into WSL or Windows into Linux is slow, really slow for the build. Some will argue that if you're only going to run it once, like it's probably just as fast to not reclone and just do it and deal with a slower build. But if you're going to run more than a couple times, it's clearly beneficial to clone into the container or the Linux environment. Otherwise, everything seems to work and no real problems.
Okay.
But I guess you're not evaluating things like Docker that can do a Windows agent, right? You're talking about still running a Linux agent inside of Windows through WSL.
So it is Docker still in WSL. So Windows Docker will work with WSL. There's a special checkbox you can check that will put Docker inside the WSL image. And that, again, for performance reasons, seems to be the best path. All right. So I'm going to go back to our discussion and see if there's any old news. Mike, have you been able to send out anything about the tool chains?
No, but it's very close to the top of my list. I'll work on that tomorrow.
Okay. Looking back at the 28th, I did bring up at the community meeting this idea around RFCs, moving to a process like the example for Rustlang. I think, unfortunately, I don't know, Mickey, if you have a comment, but I think the audience at the community meeting is smaller than this audience. Yes. I don't know how to make progress.
Yes, and the thing to do, I guess, is to take and put this out on the EDK2 mailing list and see if we can get some more feedback. But
if no one here has any comments, I guess I'll send an RFC for a change in the RFC process.
Okay, that would be good.
I don't see any other updates. Anything else people want to talk about?
I just want to have just note an observation about your RFC ideas is the code first, the EDK2 code first process, which is about trying to work on a potential industry standard spec change in open source before it's submitted to the industry standard body, with UEFI being one of the primary ones considered there. The process we've established there is to do the work in a branch of the EDK2 staging repo, and the branch contains both the code associated with the change as well as a markdown document with the proposed spec change. It's one of these things. I only bring this up that if you're looking at alternatives for how to work with RFCs, that seems to be a pattern that at least yet another one that we have for communication, where it's a combination of Bugzilla for the code and the spec changes that follow the code first process, and the artifacts of the code and the documents being in Git in the EDK2 staging repo. And I point that out just because I think what you're suggesting, Sean, is similar from the respect of the documentation is going into a Git repo with your proposal. So maybe there's a way to align the code first process with a general purpose RFC process.
I mean, I think, yeah, I can see some alignment there. You know, when we run the code first process on Project Mu, we've done it slightly differently, and we've just used a PR with the ECR as a markdown file in it. And I think for the one, there's only been one that we've run through that process, but it has worked fine. But we did just close the PR without merging when it was completed. And maybe that from the code first side is not desirable. I don't know. Do you have feedback on the code first process within EDK2? Has it worked well? Has it actually led to adoption?
I'd have to go look at the statistics on it. And I'd say that on the code first process, you know, we probably have not had enough items go through it yet to really have strong feedback, but it's probably one of those things we probably want to revisit and see if we want to make any adjustments to it from the way it works. And so maybe this is an opportunity to kind of do that and propose broadening its scope. I think there is value in having permanent records of these, you know, RFCs, even ones that are, you know, not adopted, right? So I think that's where I think your suggestion of following the Rust community's use of Git, you know, that's a way that it's still permanently stored the versions of the ones that are adopted and ones that are ultimately not adopted.
Yep.
So Sammer from ARM, or wherever Sammer works now, has run he's probably run 4 or 5 different things through code first that have been accepted into the spec. So he would probably be a good person to get some feedback from.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the one challenge I've seen with it is that it doesn't, the code, because it's in staging, doesn't lead to easy integrations. So I would be curious to see what Sammer has to say there. Okay, sounds good. I'll mention that. I guess that brings up one more thing that Michael and I were talking about today. If no one else has anything, there has been, like, I guess I'm looking for guidance. This isn't quite tools, although it can lead into tools. Guidance around when an RFC is needed, when a design review, whatever that actually means, is needed, and when just a series on the mailing list is sufficient. Are you aware of any clear guidance on that? And I guess the feedback is I feel like we're not doing a good enough job there. I see a lot of patches come through that I'm pretty surprised by, that are pretty dramatic changes that either I missed the opportunity to have comments on them, or there's already a 45 patch series and it's kind of late in the game to now start giving feedback.
First, I'd say it's never too late to give feedback if the very first patch that no communication about it is a very large patch set with a large change. But my opinion is that if you do see a large change being proposed immediately in code with no background, it is fair for the community or any of the community members to request a design review. If it's hard to consume, like, why are we doing this? Why is it valuable? Who would use it? Kind of questions. And ask the submitter to go to Ray's community design meeting and prepare a presentation on the new feature. As far as guidance on what requires an RFC or a design review meeting or a patch series, I don't think there is any, and I think it'd be challenging to do so. I'd rather see the community be as less friction as possible getting work done, and so whatever the submitter or a developer that's creating the content, whatever format approach they want to take first is fine. And if the community wants to see more information, they can ask for more information as part of the feedback cycle. The general approach I personally follow is, if it's a major new feature never seen before in the EDK2, probably a good idea to do a design review. If you're making a structural change, I think to code or to tools that's significant, that may be, and you're not sure of direction, that you've got many options and you're looking for feedback on the direction before you start working on code, that feels more like an RFC first to get comments before you start, putting in significant development activity into something. But those would just be very rough guidelines, and I said I don't think that there is one set of rules that would apply everywhere.
Okay. Michael, is there anything you wanted to add to that from our discussion today?
Not really. Where are the designs from Ray's meeting stored at? Are they like, I imagine wherever they're stored at, we could store the videos for this meeting.
Great question. I forget where that is. You might send an email to Ray and ask him where the archive is for the design meeting.
Okay.
There's also a lot of training collateral that's been developed and stored in, I think, GitHub. That's in the form of like videos and presentations.
Yeah, I've seen that on the, I think it's like on the Tiano Core wiki maybe, or maybe that's at least where the link to it is. But I think that's worked pretty well for me accessing things, is hosting it on there.
There's a file section in Groups.io that has.
Yeah. I just put, yep. And I just put a directory on there, and I'm going to upload this meeting's minutes, or this meeting's recording when we get done.
Great. Okay. Other things people want to talk about?
I wanted to just follow up on the EDK2 platform CI related stuff. Did we have like a path forward on making progress there in terms of like, I guess like a separate virtual team looking at the problems, or I'm not really sure like what the next steps are to resolve some of the issues in EDK2 platforms we've brought up in the past.
Mike, was there ever any success at getting a list of active maintainers and the code that they maintain of EDK2 platforms, so that we could maybe pull together an actual group that cares enough about the repo to be willing to make changes?
I think we just have some more work to do on getting that cleaned up. I've got some feedback from some of the Intel maintained platforms, but not the platforms as a whole. So yeah, let's get that email conversation started. I can work on that tomorrow as well with the tool chain stuff, just to keep things moving. And Stephen, I think you've expressed some interest in being able to run CI jobs on remote platforms, right, out of open source. So maybe that's something you'd be interested in helping define within this group.
Okay. I would like to know what I can help.
Michael, I think that probably is our next step, is to get a list of people that have opinions.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And I think that is Bugzilla 3659 for whoever wants to take that one up. That's the audit, the maintainers list, Bugzilla item.
Sounds good. Any, I guess, one more long-running one, Mike. Any progress on CI or GitHub PRs for code contributions?
No, not in the past 2 weeks.
I'll take back the emails around maintainers if you'll work on that one instead. I'm happy to send those.
Sure.
Okay. Let's do that, because again, I think so much of this hinges on improving our contribution process and getting more feedback and more a path where automations are possible. I can tell a story where we just my team just submitted something to Python for the language itself. There was a bug that's actually impacting EDK2, and they switched to GitHub over the weekend for all their issues. All like 50,000 plus issues were migrated, and their whole process is now GitHub driven, and it's pretty impressive on how easily you can track data and people and the bots they have running that, you know, assign labels and let you know the status of both your PRs and your issues. You know, I know they're a big organization or they have more support, but you know, there's so many examples of using automation to improve the community. Really got to get some steps in that direction.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many custom services they implemented to support that.
But the one thing is they actually give you a bunch of services too that you can just implement right from the get-go.
Yeah.
You know, like downstream notifications on new releases, or, you know, there's just a ton of them that I've been going through reading about.
Yeah, I know some of the things we've talked about here. I think even in this meeting was about the like code owners does not fit our current way of tracking maintainers and reviewers, and how to assign reviewers to an open issue. So I'm just curious if the Python organization, being a much bigger organization, if they're using code owners or if they've got custom tooling tied into GitHub that helps with their development process. I'll
go look, see if we can tell anything. Most of those bots remember that one I think we showed you based on Probot or whatever that framework is. It makes writing a bot in JavaScript really easy. Most of those bots is what I've seen, both Rust and Python. Well, actually, I don't know Python, but I've seen Rust use them. And you know, again, they're pretty lightweight and easy, and do things out of the box for you.
Okay. Yeah, they have a code owners file. Some of them go to an entire team.
Okay. Well, I mean, again, I think, you know, having a custom, I as much as I like the idea of having reviewers and maintainers as a separate permission level, I'd rather see automation than to have that feature, right? So, yeah. And I did bring up with Mickey on the community meeting around the lack of maintainers and the poor maintainer process we have right now. And I asked if we should burn it all down by deleting the maintainers.txt file. I didn't get any complaints. Nobody disagreed on the community meeting. I don't know what you think about that, Mike, but you know, basically rebuild that file out of, you know, current history and current people that want to maintain something, and if something isn't maintained, then it takes a hard conversation. But having a bunch of names there that don't follow through is not a great process either.
Yeah, it's not helpful at all.
I agree. So having the starting point, having maintainers.txt be accurate, and if there's huge chunks that are unmaintained, then yeah, that's a hard conversation for the community to figure out how we move forward.
If we switch to code owners, it would come naturally. We would have to redo that file anyways.
Yes.
All right, I got nothing more. So if there's anything more from anyone out there? Again, we really hope this meeting would be people bringing other ideas and bringing their problems and maybe their solutions. So hopefully people are thinking about that.
Any status on 2022?
So we just hit one problem that we're fighting right now, which is that image that Windows VS20 or Windows 2022 it doesn't have the WDK available. So it's basically not appropriate for building kernel modules and things like that on Windows. We know that impacts the PyTools projects where we have capsule tools that build capsules and use some of the WDK tools to do that. I haven't seen that hit CI, so I don't think it would hit the EDK2 CI, but it is kind of an unfortunate gap in the current Windows VM image. So we're trying to get that resolved because obviously if we're going to switch over to it, if we're building like platform CI, there's chances that we are building things that would need the WDK. I don't know if
we'd have to install those as part of our startup script, right?
Yes, which is painful. Given that we start up, 30 plus things all the time.
Right. Okay.
So the claim is, and this is odd in my opinion, we're going to try to escalate it with internally since this is something we can kind of do internally. The claim is that there is no WDK for Windows 11. There's one in preview, but there's not an official one, and so they're not including it.
Okay.
Seems ridiculous that they've blocked all people building kernel modules. So I'm hopeful that we can get that unblocked.
Okay.
Okay, well, if nothing else, thanks everybody, and we'll talk next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you.